Psalms chapter 3. Now we went down to verse 4, but I'm going to read it just so we get a context. Psalms 3 verse 1. The Psalm of David when he fled from Absalom his son. Lord, how are they increased that trouble me? Many are they that rise up against me. Many there be which say of my soul, there is no help for him in God. Selah. That's an important word. But thou, O Lord, art a shield for me, my glory, and the lifter up of mine head. I cried unto the Lord with my voice, and he heard me out of his holy hill, Selah. Okay, this is talking, the Selah is a reference to something. In Jeremiah 30 verse 7, he said, alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble. That's where Selah comes back into play. That's going to be Petra. So tonight we'll pick up where we left off, talking about Selah. So in Psalms 3, verse 4, we found our word. He said, I cried unto the Lord with my voice, and he heard me out of his holy hill, Selah. Now, anytime you see the word Selah, it's a reference to millennium, tribulation, end times. And it just appears over and over and over. Now, someone who doesn't have a clue what it means will tell you what it means is it's a musical term and it means a rest, like a half note rest or a quarter note rest. It doesn't mean a quarter note rest or a half note rest. It's in reference to something. Let's find Selah in the Bible. 2 Kings 14. 2 Kings 14, verse 7. Second Kings 14, verse 7. Now let's go with the standard interpretation that Selah means a musical rest. 2 Kings 14, 7. He slew of Edom in the valley of Salt 10,000 and took a musical rest by war. No, he took Selah. Obviously that's a mountain. By war. Okay, there's nothing restful about war. And called the name of it Joktheel unto this day. This is Selah Petra, the city, the rock city. It's where the tribulation Jews are going to run to. And in the second advent, it's called a rock of separation. We'll find that in 1 Samuel 23, verse 8. 1 Samuel 23, 8. Now this is one you wouldn't get right off the bat. You would have to look it up. And there's nothing wrong with doing a little work every now and then. 1 Samuel 23, 28. Wherefore Saul returned from pursuing after David and went against the Philistines. Therefore they called the place Selah Hamahalakah. That means rock of separation. So if you look up the Hebrew on that, it's a rock of separation. And that's what Petra in the tribulation is going to be. It's going to be a separation, a hiding place, a rock of defense. It's going to keep Israel safe from all the turmoil that's going on. Now that doesn't mean it's going to be the Taj Mahal and they're just going to be living high on the hog. No, they'll be safe, but that's it. They'll still be in fear. Do it? No, it's not going to be. It'll be relatively comfortable from what they could have had. God's already worked this thing out. The Jewish remnant will go here in the tribulation to hide before the Lord returns to save them. You'll find it in Isaiah chapter 16. Isaiah 16, verse 1 to 4. Isaiah 16, 1 to 4. Isaiah 16, 1 to 4. He says, send ye the Lamb, we know who the Lamb is, to the ruler of the land from Selah to the wilderness, unto the mountain of the daughter of Zion. For it shall be that as the wandering bird cast out of the nest, so the daughters of Moab shall be at the fords of Arnon. Take counsel, execute judgment, make thy shadow as the night in the midst of noonday. Hide the outcast, be weary, not him that wandereth. Let mine outcast dwell with thee, Moab. Be thou a covert unto them from the face of the spoiler. That is, everything around them is after the Jew. So where they're going here, verse 1, Selah, is going to be a covering for them. For the extortioner, we know who that is, that's the devil, is at an end. The spoiler ceases. The oppressors are consumed out of the land. That's how it's going to wind up. But you see the reference there is to Selah. So that's what he's talking about. Psalms chapter 3, verse 5. Psalms chapter 3, verse 5. Psalms 3, verse 5. 5 to 6.
So they're going back to the wilderness, just like
Yep.
Israel was.
Mm-hmm. Psalms 3, verse 5. David, read me verse 5.
I laid me down and slept. I awakened, for the Lord sustained me.
Okay, what's that verse remind you of?
Sleeping.
Okay, read the first phrase before it gets to the semicolon.
I laid me down to sleep and slept.
Uh-huh. Do you know a little nursery rhyme that goes with that?
Oh, yeah. Now I lay me down to sleep.
There's an old prayer that kids used to have to say before bedtime, and it was this: Now I lay me down to sleep, I pray the Lord my soul to keep, and if I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. That's wrong. That's a perversion of the original. I'll read you the original. Now I lay me down to sleep. The original says, I pray the Lord my soul to take, and this I ask for Jesus' sake. Big difference. Big difference. That's what we're going to get here. This is the millennium prophecies, or the tribulation prophecies. He's asking God to save them, to take them. These words are omitted in the new version of it. They're fairly new version. I don't know that I've heard anybody say it in years, but God sustains the saint when you sleep,
That actual,
even the heathen. Mm-hmm.
that actual
Now I'll lay me down to sleep.
is in a Metallica song.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, Sandman.
Mm. Yep.
I'm sorry that I know that.
Yeah. God sustains a saint when he sleeps, and the heathen. He's doing something good for them in order for them to recognize his goodness by keeping them alive when they had no say in it. When you wake, you still are not in control. You're not thinking about your respiratory system. You're not thinking about, is my blood flowing through all the right veins? And even if you were, there was nothing you could do about it to make it work or not work. God's in control of that. He's saying here that he's going to lay down and sleep, and he knows that God's going to take care of everything. Now, I didn't read verse 6. Let's read that one. I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people that have set themselves against me around about. Okay, he says, I lay me down to sleep. I awake, for the Lord sustained me. Okay, I went down to sleep, got up, no problem. God took care of me. Then he says, I'll not be afraid of 10,000 people. So, what's the reference here? The reference is in Selah. In the tribulation, Jews are fearful for their life. He's saying here, I'm not going to worry about it. God takes care of me. I'm going to lay down, I'm going to sleep, and when I wake up, I know there's going to be enemies there, but I'm not worried about them. Let's see. Now this is going to be, on the practical side, this is going to be very good because it's going to tell you how to get through seemingly impossible, difficult situations. But we'll look at both sides, both practical and doctrinal. God sustains the saint when he sleeps. You'll wake up dead if he doesn't in hell or in heaven if he decides to take you that way. In 2 Kings 19. 2 Kings 19, verse 35. Second Kings 19:35. Here's a bunch of people God decided to take out one night while they were sleeping. They had nothing to do with it. They didn't see it coming. He just said, enough's enough, you're done. 2 Kings 19:35. And it came to pass that night, so they're in their tent, in the bunk bed, sleeping,
185,000.
that the angel of the Lord went out and smote in the camp of the Assyrians 185,000. And when they arose early in the morning, behold, they were all dead corpses. Okay, so Israel didn't even have to fight these people. Because God decided one night, I'm not going to let them wake up.
You only killed a portion of the army?
No, this is the army he killed. The people that woke up are the Israelites. They were afraid they were going to have to go out and fight this great force.
Wasn't
They
it,
woke up and everything there is dead.
wasn't it two of the leprosy people this side, what did they got to lose, and they went out there and found them all dead or something like that?
Yeah, I'd have to reread
Yeah,
it, find out.
something.
God has to sustain you on your sleeping bed. The Bible has a lot to say about a bed. We spend a lot of time in bed. You don't realize it, but if you were to add it up, a great majority of your life is spent in bed. Yeah, a long time. Now, some of us spend less time there than others, but God has to sustain you on your sleeping bed. He has to sustain you in your sick bed. He's got to sustain you in your deathbed. Those are important places that you learn, or you should learn, God is the one you can depend on. Jacob died in bed. In Genesis 49:33 it says, and when Jacob made an end of commanding his sons, he gathered up his feet into the bed and yielded up the ghost and was gathered in his people. One king was murdered in his bed. In 2 Samuel 4:7, this is Ishbosheth, the last surviving relative of Saul. And
Samuel,
2 Samuel 4, verse 7. This is who, in theory, could have claimed the throne. For when they'd come into the house, he lay on his bed, in his bedchamber, and they smote him, and slew him, and beheaded him, and took his head, and got them away through the plain all that night. Okay, so there's a king, you'd think that he's safe. No, sir. Your bed could be the last place you lay your head. The bride of Christ. You'll find the bride of Christ encoded in the Song of Solomon. Song of Solomon, chapter 3, verse 1. The bride of Christ will think about Christ on her bed. By night on my bed I sought him whom my soul loveth. There's something unique about your bed. You have time to think. You don't have the distractions of the day. One of the worst things that has happened is all the entertainment and TVs going into every bedroom. Because that plays so you can't think. Then you go to sleep. This is a telling thing to do. Some people don't remember what they dream. Some people do. I remember every now and then. I remember what I dream. But if you want to, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh, and out of the abundance of the heart, the mind dreams. So, analyze your dreams. Are your dreams about you being the Savior? That's wicked. That means you've put yourself above God. That's an imagination that needs to be cast down. If your dreams are about pointing people to the Savior, that's a good one. Because that's what your position is supposed to be. That doesn't have anything to do with anything. I just brought it up. Okay, Song of Solomon 3:1. By night on my bed I sought him whom my soul loveth. I sought him, but I found him not. Okay, we can find him in his word, but physically he's not here. And we should be seeking all we can get of him in his word right now. Because he's not here. One day we're going to join him, but it's not yet. In Job chapter 17, you can make your bed darkness, or you can make your bed in hell. That's a man's choice. Job 17:13. Job 17:13, he says, if I wait, the grave is mine house, the hacienda. I have made my bed in the darkness. Some people's life is lived just like you sleep, in darkness. And that's the way they live. It's just in darkness. They might as well be asleep. In Psalms 139, verse 8, he says, if I ascend up into heaven, thou art there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, thou art there. Your bed becomes an important place in your life the more you think about it. You've spent a lot of time there. You can howl on your bed, you can cry, and you can fill your bed with tears, as the Bible says. Because the bed is a place where you do a lot of thinking. Or you should. In Psalm 6, verse 6, he says, I am weary with my groanings. All the night make I my bed to swim. I water my couch with tears. God hears. God gets a lot of communication from you out of the times you're in bed. Because you're not talking to somebody else. Things that really matter, your mind goes to when you're laying there with no one, no interference. God likes that. Hosea 7:14 says, and they have not cried unto me with their heart when they howled upon their beds. Now there's a tragedy. There's somebody who's in bed thinking about life's problems. Jesus Christ is there, God is there, the Savior and the only one that can help them. They're howling, moaning, and crying, but not to Him. He says, I hear it, but you're not calling me, so I'm not going to help you. They assemble themselves for corn and wine, and they rebel against me. The old saying is, if you make your bed, you'll have to lie in it. And in the figurative sense, that's a lot of people are just making what they're going to be living in. The life you're living now is the one that you'll become. You don't just suddenly, all of a sudden, hit a certain age or a certain maturity level and all of a sudden everything is perfect. No, that's a long practice of working toward that goal. If you see somebody who is a derelict, they've worked their way up to that. They decided, I'm going to take a little nip of that. I'm going to do a social drink. I like going down to the bar. And they've given themselves reasons to do it. It's a good social atmosphere. Nobody there is a hypocrite. Whatever. That's just hypocritical because they know why they're there. They're there to drink and not use their brain because they're afraid of what they'll think. Psalms chapter 3, verse 6. Psalms 3:6. He says, I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people that have set themselves against me round about. Now, he's already talked about Selah, so this is important. There's going to be people setting round about, wanting to kill the Jews. He says, Jesus told them when he was here, he said, there's going to be a day coming when people will kill you thinking they do God service. That's what's going on here. Now, hold your place there. That's Psalms 3:1. And look up at verse, that was verse 6. Look up at verse 1. And notice what we have here. He says, Lord, how are they increased that trouble me? Many are they that rise up against me. But he said in verse 6, I'll not be afraid of 10,000s of people that have set themselves against me round about. How does that work out? Well, let's look at it. He doesn't have to be afraid no matter what the number is. Judges chapter 8 verse 10. Judges 8:10. This is Gideon. Gideon's doing some business, him and the 300. Judges 8 verse 10. Now Zebah and Zalmunna, those were the men he was fighting, were in Kahorah, and their host with them about 15,000 men, all that were left of all the host of the children of the east. For there fell 120,000 men that drew swords. Gideon puts down 135,000 to flight, right there, 135,000, and he kills 120,000. That's one Jew running off 450 of his enemy, if you do the ratio. By such statistics, 4 million Jews now in Israel should be able to handle 8 billion enemy. Leviticus 26:8. Leviticus 26:8. Leviticus 26:8. They don't realize the power that they've thrown away by turning their back on God.
Amen.
Leviticus 26:8. And 5 of you shall chase 100, and 100 of you shall put 10,000 to flight, and your enemies shall fall before you by the sword.
Wow.
Maybe he's stretching it. Look at Deuteronomy 32:30.
Maybe he's exaggerating.
When he repeats a thing, when we can find it 3 or 4 places, it's a sure bet. Deuteronomy 32, verse 30. How should one chase 1,000 and 2 put 10,000 to flight, except their rock, capital R, Jesus Christ, had sold them, and the Lord had shut them up? The way it's supposed to work is Israel is supposed to have the power of God. They're not doing it in their own might. He said, I didn't choose you because you were big and powerful. I choose you because you were small and weak. That way I can show up. Show them who the real boss is. Psalms 3, verse 7. Psalms 3:7. Now this is one of these phrases that we're going to see here that is a prophetic phrase. And you'll need to notice it as you run throughout the Bible. Arise, O Lord, save me, O my God, for thou hast smitten all mine enemies upon the cheekbone. Thou hast broken the teeth of the ungodly. Okay, this is obviously a prophecy because it hadn't happened yet. But there's a phrase in there we need to look at. Arise, O Lord, save me, O my God. This is a prayer for the second advent. It occurs over and over and over in the Psalms. I'll read through these quickly so you just see it. Psalm 7, verse 6. Arise, O Lord. There's the same phrase. In thine anger lift up thyself because of the rage of mine enemies. Awake for me to the judgment that thou hast commanded. Okay, it's all talking about tribulation, the time he's going to show up here with a sword at Armageddon and do some battle. Psalms 9 verse 19, same phrase. Arise, O Lord, let not man prevail, let the heathen be judged in thy sight. The Psalms is all about tribulation. The next chapter, chapter 10, verse 12. Arise, O Lord, O God, lift up thine hand, forget not the humble. There it is again, same thing. See it again. It's chapter 17, verse 13. Arise, O Lord. Okay, I think we're getting the picture here. He's told us when I'm talking about God coming down here and doing business and finishing things up, I'm going to use a little phrase, and I'm going to do it so many times that you don't have a choice but to recognize it. Psalm 17:13. Arise, O Lord, disappoint him, cast him down, deliver my soul from the wicked, which is thy sword. Psalm 74:22. Arise, O God, plead thine own cause. Remember how the foolish man reproacheth thee daily. Psalms 82:8. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for thou shalt inherit all nations. Psalms 132:8. Arise, O Lord, in thy rest. That's telling you something. In thy rest? In thy rest? What's that? That's the millennium rest. That's the earth is going to, or the time is going to last on this earth for just the same amount of days as creation took. 7,000 years. And the last day, in Hebrews, he calls it a Sabbath rest. And so the last 1,000 years is going to be a 1,000-year rest for the Jews. So that's what they're asking for. In thine rest, thou art the ark of thy strength. And he goes on, but that's a handful of them just to let you know what's going on here. Isaiah says, Isaiah chapter 9, verse 4. In Isaiah, we find that the Advent is going to match, the second Advent is going to match Gideon's massacre of the Midianites. Isaiah 9, verse 4. For thou hast broken the yoke of his burden, and the staff of his shoulder, and the rod of his oppressor, as in the day of Midian. So something went on with Gideon back there that pictures what God's going to do when he decides to get back here and clean things up. Look at the next chapter, chapter 10, verse 26. And the Lord of hosts shall stir up a scourge for him, according to the slaughter of Midian, at the rock of Orb. And as the rod was upon the sea, so shall he lift it up after the manner of Egypt. God's talking about how he's going to do his last battle with man right here. And he says it's like what you saw over there with Gideon. It's like how I delivered the children of Israel at the Red Sea. That's how he does it. Gideon is told this same phrase that we saw in Psalms. Judges 7, verse 9. Judges 7, verse 9. And it came to pass the same night that the Lord said unto him, Arise, get thee down unto the host, for I have delivered it into thine hand. One day God's going to look over at Jesus and he's going to say, Arise, go on down there and take care of business. They're all yours.
Right, because he's sitting right now.
That's right. Chapter 7, verse 15. And it was so, when Gideon had heard the telling of the dream and the interpretation thereof, that he worshipped and returned unto the host of Israel and said, now he talks to his host, just like Jesus Christ is going to talk to us, Arise, for the Lord hath delivered into your hand the host of Midian. There it all matches right up. You just put the pieces together and it fits. Psalms chapter 3, verse 7. Psalms 3, verse 7. He said, Arise, O Lord, we covered that one. Save me, O my God, for thou hast smitten all mine enemies upon the cheekbone. Okay, now, thou hast smitten. Well, that hasn't just happened yet. We still got lots of enemies. Israel for sure has a lot of enemies. So this is a prophecy that has not been fulfilled yet. But it is a prophecy, just like in Isaiah 53 talked about he was wounded. Okay, that was a prophecy. Well, at the time he hadn't been wounded. It was a prophecy of something to come. Thou hast smitten is a prophecy of something that will happen. In Jeremiah 50, verse 17. Jeremiah 50, verse 17. Israel is a scattered sheep. The lions have driven him away. First the king of Assyria hath devoured him, and last this Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, hath broken his bones. Payback is coming. God's going to repay them. Back to Psalms 3. Psalms 3, verse 8. Psalms 3, 8. Salvation belongeth unto the Lord. Thy blessing is upon thy people, Selah. So he connects thy people with the Lord. The Lord has a group of people. And he connects that with this word, Selah. Okay, so God's got a people. His people are Israel. Selah connects us to the end of the tribulation. Now it's all linked. We understand it all now. Thy blessing is upon the people. This is the match we'll find in Deuteronomy 32:43. This is not talking about some battle that David was fighting. This is prophecy. Deuteronomy 32:43. It says, Rejoice, O ye nations, with his people, for he will avenge the blood of his servants, plural, and will render vengeance to his adversaries, and will be merciful unto his land and to his people. Okay, this is God talking to Israel, claiming they're his people, and there's a certain spot, there's a plot of property that he protects. God does. Don't mess with Israel.
Amen.
Now, I don't do this often, but I'll give you a little something deep here. The NIV messes this up bad. The NIV will change this so that you don't understand what it's talking about. They changed that to say, may, they turned it into a question, may thy blessing be upon thy people. As though they're asking God to come bless his people. That's not what the verse says. So that destroys the whole thing there.
In Psalms 3:8?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
That's what we're
What it should say is, thy blessing is, present tense, upon thy people, Selah.
Okay.
But if you don't understand what Selah is, you look at that verse and you say, his blessing is not upon them. Well, if you think it's a musical rest, then yeah, you're right. When you understand Selah is a reference to the place the remnant will be sheltered in the tribulation, then yeah, they'll be sheltered. Okay, it'll be a place of blessing for them. So now it makes sense. But the NIV tries to change it so that it's someone praying to God, saying, bless me. One of your people bless me. Yeah, it's weak. Salvation is of the Jews. John chapter 4, verse 22. The Jew is the people of God, or Jesus. John 4:22. Ye worship, ye know not what. We worship what we worship. We know what we worship. For salvation is of the Jews. Okay. What salvation? Salvation when Jesus Christ comes back ready to do battle. Yeah, that's the salvation he's talking about. If you want salvation in the Armageddon, you need to have a very strong connection with the Jew. Now, that's a wrong dispensation for us right now. We're not in that dispensation. So you find a lot of nuts running around trying to worship Jews. Like there's some lucky rabbit's foot. There's going to be a time for that, but it ain't now.
And it's always good to do Jews good, but it's always good
Yes.
to do
Anybody.
good.
Do good to all men.
Because there's neither Jew nor Gentile, it's just
Correct.
the church of God.
Yep.
Okay. My pastor was teaching me that.
Psalms 4, verse 1. Psalms 4, verse 1. Psalms 4:1. Hear me when I call, O God of my righteousness. Thou hast enlarged me when I was in distress. Have mercy upon me and hear my prayer. O you sons of men, how long will you turn my glory into shame? How long will you love vanity and seek after leasing? Selah. There's our word again. When we see that word Selah show up, we can take note or warning that that's talking about something that is in the future. That's God coming down with an army. It shows up twice. This same word shows up twice, in verse 2 and in verse 4. So this chapter tells you exactly what it's about just by looking at, you can find that, just scan down that chapter and you see Selah, Selah, you know what it's about. You can do that when you go through Psalms. You can just flip through Psalms and every time you see Selah, Selah, you know what it's about. You don't, somebody think you're some kind of genius.
It's like I put a bookmarker so you
That's
don't
right.
mess up your dispensation.
Yeah. He says in there, that verse, O God of my righteousness. This is something different. God of my righteousness. Israel basically doesn't know about that. What they know about is works equals righteousness. But that's not what David is preaching here. Now, we understand that in our age. We understand all our righteousness are as filthy rags. But a Jew didn't understand that back then. What they understood was Deuteronomy 6. Deuteronomy 6:24. Deuteronomy 6:24 to 25. And the Lord commanded us to do all these statutes to fear the Lord our God for our good always, that he might preserve us alive as it is at this day. And it shall be our righteousness if we observe to do all these commandments before the Lord our God as he hath commanded us. That's what they understood. They understood righteousness was the result of a work. Works equals righteousness. That's not what David was preaching. David was preaching somebody else's righteousness. Psalms 22:6. David is a picture of Christ, and we'll see a lot of similarities in his life. But this talking about righteousness that has something to do with somebody outside of a work that he produced, that's foreign to Israel at this time. Psalms 22:6. But I am a worm and no man, a reproach of men and despised of the people. That's not the Jewish mindset at this time. If they're obeying God, they're supposed to be blessed with every charismatic blessing. Health, wealth, and long life. That was what they were promised. He's speaking here of something that's totally foreign to these people. There's a reason for it. Chapter 22, verse 31. They shall come and shall declare his righteousness unto a people that shall be born, that he hath done this. Okay. This book of Psalms is going to be, by the time we're done with it, you're going to view the book of Psalms as a book of prophecy. Look at chapter 72, verse 1. It says, give the king thy judgments, O God, and thy righteousness unto the king's son. So he's asking God to give someone righteousness. That's a foreign concept to Israel back then. But that's the only way we get righteousness now. Because we're not Jews, he didn't give us any 10 commandments. But he can do something better than that. He can give us God's righteousness rather than having to try to earn it. Verse 2, he shall judge thy people with righteousness and thy poor with judgment. Well, if you're going to be judged with righteousness, I would rather stand having God's righteousness than one that I had to work for. Psalms 88:12. Shall thy wonders be known in the dark, and thy righteousness in the land of the forgetfulness. That's us. That's the problem with trying to work for righteousness. You just sometimes flat out forget what law you just broke. You know, you may have learned them, but that don't mean you're going to always remember them. There's a lot of laws. I wouldn't be counting on obeying all the laws to get righteousness.
640 something?
Yeah, a whole bunch. In Psalms 98:2, the Lord hath made known his salvation. His righteousness hath he openly showed in the sight of the heathen. Okay, this is all. Now we read that and we read in church age salvation into that. And that's what it is. But that's something that was not revealed back then. He's way ahead of his time on this stuff. But that's showing you the amazing stuff God put in here. He spoke through David. David doesn't have a clue what he's talking about here. I mean, he may have some idea on a surface level about how it affected him. But he doesn't have a clue about our dispensation and how God's going to use this.
He's so used to God not making sense how he does things. He just wrote it down.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You got it. Did I spell it right? Okay. David's a type of Christ, and he has the sure mercies, which is what we have.
Hallelujah.
We have eternal security. Everybody else, the Spirit of God would come on and leave and come on and leave. That doesn't happen to us. We get the Holy Spirit in us and we're sealed with it. It doesn't leave. Just like David never lost it. That's something that nobody else was promised. Look at his son, who was as close as you can get to getting the sure mercies of David would be his son. God didn't take the kingdom from him, but he didn't promise him he'd never take it from him. He had to live in fear all his days, or he should have. First Chronicles 28:7. 1 Chronicles 28:7. Moreover, I will establish his kingdom, talking about Solomon, forever, if he be consistent to do my commandments and my judgments, as at this day. Now therefore, in the sight of all Israel, the congregation of the Lord, and in the audience of our God, keep and seek for all the commandments of the Lord your God, that you may possess this good land, and leave it for an inheritance to your children after you forever. And thou, Solomon my son, know thou the God of thy father, and serve him with a perfect heart, with a willing mind. For the Lord searcheth all hearts, and understandeth all the imaginations of the thoughts. If thou seek him, he will be found of thee. But if thou forsake him, he will cast thee off forever. That's pretty tough. Now, Solomon gets the most peaceful reign of any Israelite king. He gets the most property of any Israelite king. He gets all the goodies. But what he didn't focus on was his wickedness. His wickedness says God will cast him off forever. It happened. The kingdom's divided. The kingdom is lost. It's Solomon's fault, not Rehoboam, Jeroboam, one of the Boams, the Boam boys. It's not their fault. It's Solomon's fault. He didn't train them. He turned his back on God. Psalms 4, verse 1. Psalms 4, verse 1. He says, hear me when I call, O God of my righteousness. Thou hast enlarged me when I was in distresses. Have mercy upon me and hear my prayer. So this is David in distress. Now, he had plenty of distresses. You remember, I'll just tell you, I'm not going to give you references. I'll just tell you some events and it'll trigger in your mind. David was running to Nob. Remember the story about Nob and all the priests that got slaughtered there? He's running to Goliath. Go beat up Goliath. He's trying to get his family back at Ziklag. Remember his wife, Michal. He had to go out the window to flee. Remember him running from Absalom. Remember him mourning over Absalom when he was dead. Remember him scrambling to preserve Solomon's throne from his brother, Adonijah. He knows something about distress. And he sure sounds sure of himself here. He says, thou hast enlarged me when I was in distress. That doesn't sound like something he would say. But that's exactly what he said. He said, distress don't affect nothing. That ain't real. That's temporary. It sure feels real. But he says, temporary, that ain't nothing. Verse 2. Psalms 4:2. O you sons of men, how long will you turn my glory into shame? How long will you love vanity and seek after leasing? Our word, Selah. He says, turn my glory into shame. Well, his glory was what God had done for him. He gloried in that. That's where he spent his time, and his delight was in what God was doing. That's the glory he's talking about. God delivered him from the lion and the bear and Goliath and Saul and the Philistines and the Syrians, and you name it, God delivered him from it. And he gloried repeatedly. You'll find it over and over, psalms of praise to God for that. That's what he gloried in. The word leasing is a word that is not used. It's used all the time, but people act like they don't know what it means. What's that leasing mean? It's like the these and thous. I can't figure it out. Those big words. Leasing is simple. It means deception or falsehood. We understand it. Subtly, we understand it. When you go to the car lot, you can lease a car. The deceptive thing about this is people don't realize most people lease a car, period. If you're buying it and the bank holds the note, you're leasing it. You're leasing it from the bank. The bank has just promised you that if you'll fulfill these certain requirements, we'll give you the title. But you're still leasing it. Leasing means to give the appearance as though you're one thing when you're the opposite. So we drive around in a car that's leased or that's financed as though we own it. It ain't yours. You might be driving it, giving everybody the appearance that you have one, but you don't. It ain't yours. It's leased. Leasing. Oh, you're fine. Let's find it again. Here's where it shows up heavy in the New Testament, a place you wouldn't think you would see it. 2 Thessalonians 2. This leasing and Selah and falsehood and deception, it's all connected there to tell you it's a reference to tribulation. 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 3. 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 3. So he told us about leasing, deception, Selah. So we know he's talking about the tribulation. So look at it here. Let's see if the same phrases connect. 2 Thessalonians 2, 3 to 12. Let no man deceive you, as in leasing, by any means. For that day, we know what that day is, we've seen that before, shall not come except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Remember ye not that when I was with you, I told you these things, and now you know what withholdeth, that he might be revealed in his time. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way. And then shall that wicked one be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. That's war, just like he's been talking about in Psalms. Verse 9. Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders. Verse 10. And with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause shall God send them strong delusions, as in leasing, as in falsehood, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned who believe not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. That's God doing the damning. Now these people who were loving leasing, they had no love of the truth. It's a prophecy here. It's all linking right back up, and we don't have time to finish the chapter, but I'll mark it and we'll pick back up there next time. It's just starting to get good every time we have to leave. All right, we'll finish. We'll pick it up at verse 3 again next time.
Yeah, you were talking about, earlier you were talking about something about seeing. And I found a scripture in Psalms 36,